Hey everybody, this is Rydo, and we're back to another live stream of Shadowverse. I guess for the time being, starting in the evening is how this is just gonna go. Um, let's see, what should we start with today? So, yeah, I'm just in general not waking up and getting going very early these days. I did manage for the accountability section to record some more Danganronpa, but not really a lot of it. Um, It definitely is difficult to make a lot of episodes when you're specifically making 2 hour and a half episodes of the extra game of Danganronpa in particular, where very little is happening. I'm now into the second playthrough of the extra school life game, um, which which means that I can rush through a decent amount of it. Uh, I also have finished all the storyline relationship dates with each character, and so now the only thing that you could try and get is to rush through the school life game and get characters up to 10 hearts of affection in the secondary date uh, function that was added with the 1.2 reloaded version of Trigger Happy Havoc Danganronpa. Um, in all honesty, that might prove to be a little bit more difficult and more of a video game than I would expect. Whereas the main gameplay loop of sending characters. See, we're going to be playing Runecraft or Shadowcraft again, I suppose. Or just, yeah, until we get victories. Which we certainly didn't have a whole lot of luck with that. Yeah, I'm kind of overflowing uh, with resources for the main construction stuff. I have confirmed that you have this goal of a Monokuma backup, is what it's called, that you're supposed to build for every week. And if you build 2 or 3 of them, that does not increase your reward or the evaluation. So at the end of the week, the character you get evaluated as doing poorly regardless, because it's just a joke. Like, they're just always going to complain. So at the very beginning of a new game plus, you really just want to increase the amount of resources you can get so that you can get uh, more um, get what you need to build Monokumas and get power up upgrades, which is the real thing that you should focus on, is just getting your level up as far as the skill, because the skill of each character is the only thing that carries over in a new game plus. So you want to get everything up to a searching of 9, and you probably wouldn't do terrible to have at least one person up to a cleaning of 9. Even 2 people up to a cleaning level of 9 would be useful. Yeah, very, very early, having like your first goal should be to get the upgrades that lets you use less energy per every day to search. Otherwise, you're going to constantly run out of energy, and there's no way to ever permanently upgrade that. And then increase the efficiency on cleaning, so you have less people spending time cleaning. But by the end of the first week, on a second or third playthrough, you probably could just set each character to go to one of the different locations. That way, throughout the entirety of 50 days that a playthrough goes through, you will just get enough resources anyways for everything. Or at least that's ideally where it would happen. And that means less agonizing every day as far as playing the strategy and placing a certain character to search a certain room. Whereas at the beginning, having 15 of the characters go to the same room makes a lot more sense. Or more accurately, 5 characters go to one room, 5 characters go to another room, 5 characters go to another room. Yeah, I think at a point it will get down to just being able to press a few buttons and skip through the entirety of a week without having to really construct anything or do anything. And then it reminds you and shows you a different screen right before you have to turn in the Monokuma backup you're supposed to build, so you could literally build it at that point. Which then that just has you doing the secondary date sequences. And the secondary date sequences are a little bit more difficult than they seem, because it's when you go on a secondary date with a character, they pop up 3 prompts, and the 3 prompts change. They're not the same for each location. I thought that we would get lucky, or I'd hoped I was going to get lucky, and it would stay as it would be the same prompt each time. So you have to really think about it and think about which of these 3 prompts is the best prompt for that specific character's personality type, which in fairness you could almost argue some of them don't have the most obvious personality types in the first place. So you're going to have to kind of guess, and if you get it right, if you get it perfectly right, you get a full heart. If you get it halfway right, which halfway is probably fairly subjective, then you will get let's see, then if you get it halfway right, you'll get half a heart, but if you get it totally wrong, you then will not get anything. So you could almost certainly get the perfect ending with 1 character, and 2 characters seems very believable too per each run. And mathematically speaking, if you got it perfect, you could get up to 5 characters. But honestly, I think you're going to make enough mistakes on these dates that you will not get even consistently 3 characters. So that's potentially 5, 6, 7 runs through this extra game, with you getting somewhat faster by the 2nd and 3rd run. But that's about all you could really expect is 5 or 6 runs and a little bit of improvement on speed. You are going to very quickly find that that there's a limit to how fast you can run through a run. Which honestly, it just kind of, if it weren't for the achievement thing, it really feels like if you don't care about achievements, you would be very well off to play the main game of Danganronpa and then get 100% save file and just look at all the unlocked collectibles and extras. Maybe go through 1 run of the new game plus just to see what it is, but not really waste your time on it. The problem here really boils down to the fact that you're wasting time with this new game plus, which is very different from what main Danganronpa game is, and that is causing you to waste time playing that game when you could be playing Danganronpa 2 or the spin-off Danganronpa Ultra Despair Girls or Danganronpa 3. And it really feels like they are falling into the just standard trappings of a visual novel in that they want to waste a lot of your time. And I will have to admit that if it weren't for the fact that Danganronpa came out when it did, and it was on the PSP, which was fairly popular, at least in Japan, during the time, Danganronpa really, by modern standards, does not deserve to have been a series that succeeded and is still around. It really just does feel like a dumbed down, kid-friendly version of the Nonary games. The general concept of murder mystery games is an interesting idea, certainly. But I feel like Professor Layton type games and Ace Phoenix, Ace Attorney Phoenix, or whatever the attorney game is, probably does that better too. And I'm not sure that those games ever came to PC. Anyways, let's go through the video game news, since I guess I'm still trying to recover time, as always. I need to, frankly, start uploading more videos. That's how I know I'm going particularly long in any one series, is when I'm filling up an entire SSD hard drive with just footage from Danganronpa and the occasional live stream. Alright, so we have a game here on Steam called Mole Mail, which looks like it is a kind of platforming, jumping game to deliver mail. We've seen versions of this before. The slight difference here is that you're a mole underground. They can jump. There might be something to this. It looks like it's somewhat varied in its design. A slight lack of polish in the visuals, but nothing terrible. $11.99, bunch of languages. And I forgot to log in, so once again, I can't just click things to put on the follow list, but I will put that on the follow list.
Hey, how's everyone doing tonight?
Next, we have a game called Rohoin Rumble, which looks like a NES beat-em-up game, which is $4.99 in English only. I guess I have to put this on the follow list, or do I? Like, I kind of think I do, because this could be that it's like only 5 minutes long and one location, or it could just be that it's doing a very bad job of advertising different backgrounds and things. That's what you would want to see, is different backgrounds. Yeah, there's definitely some questions on that, but I wouldn't want to just immediately eliminate the game either. Let's see, next we have Pixel Game Maker Series Puzzle Pedestrians, which not sure I want to see games on the idea, around the idea of being labeled as Pixel Game Maker games. This doesn't look terrible, but it is confusing. I did add some quality of services and tried to tweak my network setup a little bit more, and I think that's working. We are at least seeing all the images loaded, and right now is the test to see if the network for weirder traffic like video game traffic, because I don't know what port that's on, works.
This is what love looks like.
Pop and roll.
Stop!
Let's see, next we have a game on Steam called Revita,
You're
which the person is streaming it. They are still doing a pretty bad job as far as actually integrating the idea of this person's live streaming now into the old Steam game storefront pages. In all fairness, I think Amazon.com has also done a fairly bad job of trying to integrate video into their storefront pages. And I just don't know if there is a good system there, or if people even really want that.
Is that a human?
Because, yeah, it may very well be the case that people just don't want, they just do not want to look at videos. Even when you're looking at like a product from Amazon.com, I can certainly see an argument around you want to just read text and be through it faster than what it's going to be if somebody makes a video. Because even if you jump directly into videos and try to move as fast as possible, which is in theory what I'm trying to do when I stream, I'm still fairly bad about hopping into it and getting to the point. And until recently, YouTube's has been encouraging that more than anything. Now the search results jump to the instance that they think people actually care about. I have seen it have moderate amount of success there. Okay. This could deal 6. This could summon a zombie.
The living are too proud.
I'm about to lose. Yeah, this game Revita, it looks very high paced, fast. It looks polished enough. It looks like a real game. If anything, it might be a little too zoomed in, a little bit bullet helly. They're calling it an action roguelike. I think it might work. $13.49, English full audio. Yeah, I don't know what you would want to do to integrate this broadcast element that the same way. Like here we've got advertisement banner ads, which are new for game pages, or at least some game pages. And then here we've got just a full video being broadcast, and you can see at 1080p. They're not really accounting for page size very well. But they definitely want to see if they can put people's eyes in front of that. What can we do? Basically nothing.
Lands of wonder, lands of marvels. Want to play? Let the fantasy embrace you. Wish for anything.
That.
I'll fight for all
That.
eternity.
And return. Let's see. Next, we have a game on Steam called Tales from the Underrealm, Hazel, which is tagged as a visual novel. Seems to be a big busted cleavaged demon character, and mostly a sex visual novel from the look of it. Yep, although it's not tagged with nudity. It's $10.79. Let's see. Yeah, I feel particularly strange today. I've started saying that quite a lot, but yeah, I don't feel sleepy, but I also don't feel like I'm moving as fast as I normally am. It's almost as if I've found some weird mix between being slightly depressed energy-wise and being
Don't underestimate me.
and not being
but seize the
a little bit
future.
more manic about it, which I wouldn't be surprised if I am a little bit swinging between slightly low energy and slightly high energy, and I just never normally find the middle ground. Next we have a game on Steam called Castle Hold, which is a trading card game with some hex placement. See some graphics here. That's good. But I don't know if I see a real game here. Free to play with in-app purchases. See, everything here seems like there really is not much of a gameplay mechanic. And instead they're heavily focusing on on the idea of pulls and in-app purchases and gacha elements.
I'll be a talisman master someday.
So yeah, I don't think Castle Hold needs to be on the fall list. Here we have a game called Plasma Spheres, which now we're starting to see some garbage. I curated maybe 2 or 3 games this time. I'm still having trouble with Twitter not loading completely. I don't know what's really stopping it. But so I went back to what's on Steam's Twitter page and went back to the last time we streamed. And I think I may just have to consistently do that. At a certain point, it almost makes an argument to not bother to even look at my main Twitter feed, but then there would be basically no new video game news.
Maybe, just maybe, this magic will help.
Yeah, so I might be missing a few news announcements, but at the moment there's basically nothing happening. Here we have a game called Plasma Attack, which is just a side-scrolling shooter for $2.99, English allegedly full audio. Here we have a game called Escape Machine City Airborne, which is tagged as a hidden object puzzle game. These adventure games. It's from Big Loop Studios and Snapbreak Games, so question is, what price tag? $8.99? A little expensive, but not crazy expensive considering Big Fish Games usually charges about $12 or $13.99 for these types of games. It's still fairly hard to justify putting any of those games on the wish list or the follow list, though. If you played one, you played them all, is pretty much what it boils down to. Yes. I could have played this.
You'll all see.
Next, we have a game on Steam called Drabidobu Combat Pets, which this looks like a Chinese ripoff of like Pokemon card game. It looks pretty bad. Early access, $19.99, English only. Alright, well. Despite the fact that it has a massive amount of text on the screen, it apparently is an English game, just poorly designed. I can tell now, 5 minutes after saying I felt weird one way, that I'm starting to yawn, so I am probably going to start getting tired within the next hour or two. And that seems to be the way it goes, is that I am waking up around 3 or 4 in the afternoon, and then immediately I'm getting tired again, and then maybe taking another nap, or maybe staying up till like 10 and then falling asleep again. Well, no, 10. Probably closer to 10 in the morning that I'm staying up. Yeah. Yeah, I guess at this point I don't even know what's going on. My mind is so sleep idled. And yeah, there was a point a couple days ago where I heard a like Amber Alert type alarm go off on someone's cell phone on TV, which is actually illegal. You're not allowed to broadcast the Amber Alert things, but it was a live like news news broadcast, so I don't think they'd get in trouble for that incidentally happening. But and frankly, I wouldn't really even blame a producer for not dropping to a like 7-second delay backup because the alarm went off, because I wouldn't blame somebody if they did not think of that.
I embrace all manner of spellcraft.
But yeah, someone was talking to me as soon as I heard that alarm go off, my entire attention just focused on the alarm, and I totally zoned out as far as what the other person was saying, and I had to just admit it and go, I'm sorry, I totally zoned out there. I didn't hear a word you just said. And that's not the first time. Reddit had an interesting story about somebody whose attention span was increasingly getting worse, and it turned out they had a magnesium deficiency. Of course, don't get medical advice from Reddit, but it is an interesting thought to ask a doctor about. And I imagine most the GPs, if you're a normal person, will say, sure, try a magnesium vitamin over the counter. That's probably fine.
My resolve spills
Here we've got some true garbage on Steam called Cyber Emoji Tail 2099. Just total low effort joke game, piece of garbage game for 59 cents, English full audio. I mean, it really would be easy to curate these kinds of games out of existence, and at some level I think Steam has managed to discourage a lot of these games. We've seen less of them in the past 2 or 3 months, but when you have something at the at below $1, when it has the word emoji in it, that should be a red flag that somebody should at least look at the thumbnail of the game, look at the screenshots of the game, and just say, hey, let's not just immediately greenlight the sales of this. This is the first game this developer has listed on Steam, so somebody should have looked at it anyways, since this is the first relationship you would have with that game dev. So yeah, and this is definitely work that anyone could do remotely. There's nothing that is required to have Valve employees looking at games as they're submitted to Steam and just saying, hey, thumbs up, thumbs down on something. That they need to do more dog fooding, is what it's called, and actually use the Steam storefront way more than most normal people do.
Come on.
Bear the past, but seize the future.
Probably could also make an argument that there's probably still too many people at Valve that work at Valve that are playing like Counter-Strike Go, or not CSGO. What is the other game? It might be CSGO. I don't think it is though. Yeah, there's probably too many Valve employees that are playing actual Valve games or other games on Valve, and instead of actually trying to maintain the storefront or program new games.
You're nothing but a child.
That being said, for as many times as I've complained about how I think that they run Valve in a weird way, if they were going to offer me a job there, you'd be a sucker to not say yes to that, even if you were entering it knowing that you were going to leave in a year or two and just use it as a resume builder. Like, enemy follower can't attack.
I'm so lonely.
This is what love looks like.
Next, we have a game on Steam called The Last Place, which looks like it is just an asset flip first-person shooter of no interest. $44.99, ridiculously expensive. Obra Dinn is airing on my channel right now, and it's actually got a view, like single view. That's how pathetic YouTube's recommendation algorithm treats my channel now, and treats a lot of people's channels now, as any pre-recorded footage that comes out is within the first couple hours that I would actually see it.
Can I go with
It's
you?
almost guaranteed to have no views, and I'm excited to see if it even gets one view. And I've stopped looking at statistics completely, so there is a possibility that older pre-recorded footage is still getting decent amounts of views, and since I just have so many videos on the channel anyways, that might actually still be working out for me. But I'm hardly getting even a guaranteed one new subscriber a week, and at that rate it would take 50 weeks before I would have probably enough to get up to 1,000 subscribers to even get back into the YouTube partner program and getting monetization from it.
You're too strong.
And probably by the point that happens, they'll just change the rules on you again and pull the rug out from under you. This is just not working. Let's just try default Runecraft and Shadowcraft. Next, we have a game on Steam called Gravity X, which is a flying rockets and trying to avoid crashing into walls with little pixely graphics. I would recommend people check out the Return to Obra Dinn coverage. I think I did a fine job there, and I think it's an interesting game to play, although it does come with the caveat that if you actually want to play Return of the Obra Dinn, you probably should play it first yourself, otherwise you're going to be spoiled on the solution. There was no, I will admit, no real grave genius insights as far as me playing the game. I think a lot of times I actually just had to straight up guess, and I think the developer of the game, Lucas Pope, specifically said that he made some of the solutions guesses only, so he didn't, I think, do as good of a job as a second sequel I would assume would do if he ever did make a sequel. I think he would write the story better and the mystery better so that you could identify people using logic and logic alone. Or at least that would be my hope, that would be the way he would create it. And then his fancy old school looking pixel graphics as a concept was a cool idea once, but I would very much have been happy to turn that off and just have regular 3D models of characters. But yeah, I do like the game. Next we have a game on Steam called Gravity X. I think we just talked about this. How much was this? $13.49? That's way too expensive. English full audio. That's not making it to a full list. Here we have a game on Steam called Mexican Train Dominoes Gold. Yeah, one of the free sale games I have installed on my phone popped up a thing saying that Google Play was going to take it down for repetitive uploads of the similar content, and that I needed to install a solitaire collection game instead. I'm like, man, that seems weird. But at a certain point, it kind of feels like that makes sense, that Google would start cracking down on people who put out like a Klondike solitaire game and then they change it ever so slightly, then they put out a free cell solitaire type game. Mexican Train Dominoes is not one of my favorite variants of playing dominoes, and depending on the price, you do have a argument that that Tabletop Simulator is probably a better deal. One of the things specific about Mexican Train Dominoes is that it uses bigger numbers. It's not just 6. The biggest domino is not a 6-6. Here you have a 7-8, for instance. Here is a 9-9, and I believe 9-9s are the biggest numbers in Mexican Train Dominoes. So if you ever are going to get a domino set, you kind of are getting screwed out of options if you do get a domino set that goes only up to 6-6. That being said, that covers most people's desire as far as playing dominoes. This is $3.99, English only, tagged early childhood. Let's see. It says it's single player with 3 and 4 player game modes played against the computers. I'll put this on the follow list. I kind of want to see, though, if the developers made any other games. Nope. There might be an argument around the idea, we're getting some free victories today, of not calling it Mexican Train Dominoes, but I do believe that is the name. So, I don't know if you really want to get into that too much. Next, we have a game called Jetpack Astronaut, which it looks like it is just a Flappy Bird clone. There's nothing here of interest. $5.99 English and Russian. So definitely no to that one. Next, we have a game that's Asian letters and /gate. This looks like it is trying to look fairly fancy as a, I guess maybe furry anthropomorphic visual novel. Looks like it's probably just a low effort Chinese game. Free to play, Chinese only. I guess the price is right. They're calling it a text-based furry homo romance game. I don't know if homo is the word you should be using anymore, although I'm saying it out loud. It's kind of funny. The shortened version is no longer acceptable, whereas the homosexual still is acceptable to use. There's definitely some weirdness in the fact that that's a Chinese game too, because I don't think China is particularly pro-gay by any means. If anything, I think they're pretty much anti-gay. So maybe we'll start to see weirder games made by Chinese companies for a Chinese audience being sold on the worldwide marketplace, Steam marketplace, instead. See, at the moment, I don't have the quality of service set up in any way that would particularly help Shadowverse from streaming. So
That should do it.
I don't know. I might be getting some quick victories here because of my quality of service, or I might be getting quick victories because because the servers themselves in Shadowverse are having troubles. The argument against that idea is it's not like I've done anything to the quality of service settings since I started. So if it were going to be a case where consistently it was going to disconnect and make it look like the other player disconnected, then why was I able to play other games? And see, this whole retry thing, for a moment there I was having problems with that, where I had it set wrong and I was clicking retry and it was not working, but I fixed that. Yeah, as far as the whole Wi-Fi issue on my router, new router now, it seems to really just be my cell phone. And so that set me down the journey of looking to buy a new cell phone and what model I would want to get. And inherently, the problem is that there's just no competition in the United States at all. You have maybe 2 rogue companies competing against Samsung, and that's it. And Samsung at this point does not want you to have a headphone jack, which fine, I can live without a headphone jack. It's not like I've ever really used headphones that are plugged in. But then they also don't want you to have SD cards, and micro SD cards were in part the backup plan and the expansion plan for memory. And that seems kind of ridiculous to not bother to include that. So that leaves you with like the S20 fan favorite edition, or it's called S20 FE, which does have a micro SD card. I don't know if it actually has it actually has a headphone jack, but that's pretty much not the only option. There is an S21 already out, so if you're willing to get rid of to live without micro SD and without a headphone jack, you probably should just get that one. But yeah, that kind of sucks, and so I'm gonna just kind of wait and see if there's a sell, whatever happens, or until my cell phone breaks fully and to replace it. But yeah, I think that is the only real issue that's gonna fix the signal strength, is I think I have pretty much just either dropped something and broken the antenna a little bit so that the signal is lower. And if that's not the issue, then I don't know what the issue is really, and I don't think I can very quickly fix that. I would need to just get another access point, another range extender, something like that to use instead.
How much is in it for me?
That way I can get the 5 gigahertz signal to actually reach.
This wasn't worth it.
Moving on, we have a game on Steam called Wind Angel, which is just a shoot 'em up game. It doesn't look particularly impressive. If anything, it seems kind of lackluster. It doesn't seem to really have much of a focus of a life bar or a score. It's early access, $3.59. I have no idea why a game like this should be considered early access, or allowed to be considered early access. Than that. Next, we have a game on Steam called Bang on Balls Chronicles, which I feel like we've seen games like this before. It's balls with different flags on them, kind of fighting each other. $14.49, bunch of languages. Let's see, exit plan games. See, that's crazy because I know I've seen a game looking like this, but it's not from this developer slash publisher. But yeah, still don't think there's anything there. 2 clay domes. Destroy an enemy. Next, we have a game on Steam called Horizon Frosty Plus the New Warriors, which looks like it's just a low-effort platformer. $3.99, English full audio. This is definitely, by the visuals, an easy game to dismiss. See, and yeah, that time I played a full game and I totally lost. I did lower the maximum of percentage of download on my quality of service down to 100 megabits per second, which is theoretically what they're supposed to deliver, even though I've often been able to use the speed test Ookla to get much higher download speeds. I think it might be straight up broken, or it might just be a case of the Ookla speed test service expecting more of a delay when on the 5 gigahertz network, when it connects through multiple pipes and multi-threads the data, it then is able to deliver things faster than expected. That would be my guess. I've never been able to get to Google, if you just type in speed test into Google and use Google speed test, I've never been able to get that to go above 100. So yeah, I may very well have been getting faulty information for the entirety. I probably have been getting faulty information through the entirety of my experience trying to speed test. At a certain point, it doesn't matter. 100 megabits down is more than enough to expect from from my internet connection, because I'm not paying for a very fast internet connection. I don't want to pay that extra money. Next, we have a game on Steam here called Get Out, which is tagged as a puzzle noir game. Looks like it's an escape the room game. Let's see, it's free to play. Was it made by students? Nope. 8 puzzles, English full audio. I'll say check out Get Out if you're interested in it. It's a terrible name because that is also the terrible name that they used for a fairly successful good movie. So yeah, I think you would, at the very least, want to put a title here. Like, Get Out is made by this company, Millie Pittons. So Millie Pittons : Get Out would have been fine. You also see the other game that they've made is called Badminton Warrior from 2018. And it looks like total garbage, and it only got 7 user reviews since November 15th of 2018 when it was released, which that does definitely not inspire any confidence in the newer game. Let's see, do we want to do this, or do we want to start drawing cards? Do one of these. Do one of these. And then hit this, 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 evolve this.
Come forth. I better get a bonus. Iron my fair share.
Hit that guy.
Embrace me.
Next, we have a game on Steam called Cybernetica Final, which looks like it's either a tile-based strategy or a tower defense game. It's tagged as a tower defense game. $14.24 English full audio. Once again, looking at a price tag like that, that makes it very easy to dismiss. Here we have a game called Clutter 9 Extreme, which seems to be a collection of low effort mini games, and kind of felt like a troll game. Match 2 in a clutter game is an interesting idea, to say the least, but also feels like something I wouldn't really succeed at ever playing. I feel like I would have a hard time finding 2 matches. This is $8.49, bunch of languages. Yeah, I feel like if you're playing a game like that too, you have potentially an argument that you could be actually cleaning your own house instead. Do this, then get rid of one of those, then that, then go ahead and kill that. HTC Vive, or just Vive now, has this Curious Alice, We Can All Be Alice in VR, which looks like it is just a standard VR game. For Alice in Wonderland, are not, I think, branching very far away from the actual Alice in Wonderland Disney movie. Which I don't know how much of the main book actually people even read when they make an Alice in Wonderland game, or if they are just straight up mostly just stealing the ideas from the movie. I mean, this has a kind of a unique art style for VR in particular. Like, I don't know if I would really like this weird art style. What would you even call this? Almost like comic book art style? Yeah, or kids book art style? Yeah. There's a whole article talking about this. I guess this is the actual Alice Little here. That, yep. Let's see, we'll play this first. Do this to kill that. And then go ahead and play this. And attack here. But it probably highlights something about VR games and Vive, that they're making special articles about just one bit of content instead of it being such a flush marketplace where the developers of their own products and old games could focus on advertising them themselves. Anyways, moving on. We probably won't have too many more Steam games to talk about today. So it'll just all be video game news. And that may not be that long, really. TechRaptor has an article here. Over 30% of Nintendo Switch games were sold in 2020. Which, I guess the Switch came out in 2017. And when you look at that number, you are talking about a 4-year-old console. So if they were going to release a Switch 2, just like a fully backward compatible Switch with improvements and better power, I wouldn't be upset with that. And that's probably where I would settle at this point too, if I was going to ever play Nintendo games ever again, is get a Switch 2 and get some of the older Switch 1 games. It obviously needs to be backward compatible, and if it isn't, then I think at that point Nintendo is just out of the question as far as playing those games, because that's just ridiculous in modern times to not have backward compatibility. Plus, that would if they came out with a Switch 2, that would allow them to, at the very least, get away from the Joy-Con drift issue. Here we have just an image. Sony apparently has filed a patent for playable fruit PlayStation controllers. There are makerspace projects where you can plug in capacitance sensors and use like a banana as a single button. I don't know if there's a specific way that you could do it so that you would have 4 buttons, which is what I think they're implying here, is that there would be a potential 4 buttons, or at least 2 buttons on a piece of fruit. But the idea that someone could patent something, I mean, it's hard to call that simple, but it kind of is simple too, since it already exists. It's pre-existing. So the idea that Sony is trying to patent that is slightly disconcerting. The idea that they would be able to, that they think they might actually get accepted for that patent is kind of crazy. At the end of the day, nobody really wants to play any games on a piece of fruit. That's a gimmick that you would do as like a science education project in school, and anything, it probably highlights the difference between lame science projects that happen in school to educate and real world interfaces that people would actually want to spend time on and make and actually use. Playing with a piece of fruit sounds like it is way worse an idea than even than playing with third-party controllers. Moving on, TechRaptor has an article here. The Yakuza creator Toshihiro Nagoshi has admitted that he applied to Sega for kicks, and he had never actually worked in the video game industry before, which, okay. In a funny way, though, I feel like in Japan, you kind of can apply to work at a lot of companies and get hired anyways, because I wouldn't be surprised if there's just a level of assumption that Japanese hiring staff do, that they assume you are qualified for the job, and the people who apply for a job assume that it's going to be a good job when it probably isn't. But yeah.
Fighting is so sorrowful.
There's probably a decent amount of busy work that also happens, so I wouldn't be surprised if Japanese hiring agents are required to interview everybody who applies, and that they're just trying to fill out like quotas of people being hired. A lot of times, even in the West, that's how it is that there's literally just a quota to meet to hire people, and particularly temporary jobs. Temp agencies will just fill ranks on a daily basis with garbage, knowing well that that person that they're filling it with is not really a good match, or very possibly doesn't even want to work at a job like that. Temp agencies are also fairly well known for being high pressure to try and convince people to work at jobs they're not qualified for, or that they don't want to work at, to lower their standards. And generally speaking, lowering your standards for anything is a great way to not be happy in life. Of course, if you're starving to death,
Can I go with you?
you gotta take what you gotta take. Yeah, the concept of labor exploitation is alive and well in the United States for sure. Moving on, we have a game on Steam called Knockdown. This looks like it is mostly just a low effort physics game where you're trying to knock down cans with a tennis ball. The colorful backgrounds in these levels actually just distract from your actual goal. This is $3.74, English and German. Not going to the fall list.
I love the feel of the earth.
I am fairly screwed. He cleared the board and I have no cards. Gamasutra has an interesting article. Zynga has acquired the Torchlight 3 developer Extra Games, or Etc Games. That's Etc.
You're too strong.
For an undisclosed amount. Now, the Torchlight publisher Perfect World was originally founded by Max Schaefer, who was best known for co-creating Torchlight and Diablo franchise at Runic Games and Blizzard, but the Max Schaefer and Perfect World pretty much isn't the same group of people, and so it was a different group that made Torchlight 3, which I don't think people even really liked, because they turned it into a game as service type experience instead of a Diablo experience. And I believe Max Schaefer and other people who had worked on Diablo have now moved on to a now third Diablo-like series, which at a certain point, maybe that's the right move. Maybe there should just be one game like Diablo in every genre or every universe. So if you had only played Diablo 1 and then instead of Diablo 2 coming out, a sci-fi Diablo-esque game had come out, that might have been better and more varied. Or if what Diablo 2 was a standalone story in a different universe, that might have been fine too. Because as much as there's interesting connected graphics between Diablo 1 and Diablo 2 and even Diablo 3, and I don't even know if Diablo 4 has been made and released yet, that there really isn't that much of a narrative there that matters. You have Deckard Cain as a character who's liked. You have Tyrael, the angel from Diablo 2, that's kind of known, and then you have Diablo himself, who often looks completely different from game to game. But then that's pretty much it. There is a whole like crazy king narrative in Diablo 1 who starts the whole thing off and makes a deal with the devil at the beginning of Diablo 1, and I think most people wouldn't even remember that was a major focus for probably first 10 hours of Diablo 1, and then only after that do you start getting into more expanded realms and deeper depths to certain demons and things. Like, beyond that, there are specific enemies that you're going after. Big bosses, but they're fairly forgettable. In fairness, though, if you start to think about Torchlight, Torchlight was made very kid-friendly, and there's basically no enemies of mention in no story around Torchlight worth mentioning. So while Torchlight is a much newer game compared to Diablo 1, and it improved some of the concepts, it didn't really do a better job in the storyline department.
Light upon the land.
So, yeah. The third game from the creators of Diablo, I would hope would be better. Meanwhile, as far as Zynga acquiring Eccentric Games, which is what the actual news, I'm hoping that they just go forward and can do something interesting, but it probably won't be a Torchlight 4. We probably won't see much of a Torchlight 4. Let's keep on switching between the two of these until we get one more free victory. I'm not sure I even need one more victory between Shadowcraft and Runecraft, so I should probably check that too. This isn't video game news, but TechRuptor has some tabletop news. Apparently, Tiny Epic Dungeon changes its artwork after a backlash over a problematic cover art. So, I'm looking here and trying to see where the problematic cover art is. Seems like each character over here on the left has glowing eyes, and then you have a character who is covered up here and has cleavage here, and she's covered up her thigh here, versus being exposed here. So I guess this was the old artwork. Meanwhile, this orc guy is pretty much shirtless, and you can see his thigh too, and none of that's been changed, so that feels fairly sexist. The idea of this being a problem, or anybody having any trouble complaints about that, and those complaints being heeded, seems fairly ridiculous to me. Like, I honestly just don't want to live in a world where you are taking away the rights of women, and I'm going to phrase it this way, even though that it's kind of loaded. You're taking away the rights of women to show cleavage if they so choose, and have skirts that show back of the thighs and buttocks if they so choose. Because this hardly feels like this is even an argument that these are like slave girl, slave Leia type characters. This is a powerful mage character from what I can tell. It doesn't seem like she would be bullied by any characters in this universe into dressing that way. This is a clearly dark elf style rogue character, so I doubt anybody would be forcing her to show cleavage. Perhaps you could make an argument that there should be some characters that decide to be a little bit more covered up if they feel like it. Danganronpa is kind of an interesting point there, because there definitely are some characters that are showing cleavage in Danganronpa, and are cheesecake characters just to show off the female form and highlight that. And then there definitely are some characters that are completely covered up, and there's no problem in my mind. I would not have even thought of it had this not brought it up, because yeah, that's fine either way. It's just ridiculous. Like we clearly are needing to move to, I would have to almost call it a fourth wave feminism that gets back to like bra burning and focuses more on women's choice instead of this SJW conservatism being sold as liberal or progressivism when it really isn't. And if SJW mentality is that we have to take away an artist's right to depict fictional characters the way they want to, that seems ridiculous. And I guess that brings me directly into the fact that the company that sells Dr. Seuss books has decided to remove 6 specific books from sale. Now, inherently for Dr. Seuss books, these 6 books almost certainly have hundreds, if not thousands, of copies out there in the world. So it's not like you couldn't get a copy fairly easily, and I doubt the price is going to skyrocket anyways. I thought this might be related to the game Chuchel, where there was a where in Chuchel there was a character that looked like it was a dust ball that was black, of black dust and dirt, and had big red lips or white lips, I don't know, and people complained that it looked too much like blackface, and that felt like a ridiculous argument because it wasn't a human, it was a dust ball. It was clearly a dust ball. But they changed it, and in a funny way, it doesn't really matter that much, but it was a dumb argument to even have to deal with, and it certainly creates that level of fear that is increasing in every creator's mind to make sure that they're ultra woke and that they're following every single rule so that nobody's getting offended ever, which is the impossible goal. Anyways, I thought that was what the problem with the Dr. Seuss books was, but it turned out it seems like the problem was more focused around anti-Japanese sentiment. Of course, you have to remember that the anti-Japanese sentiment that would have existed in Dr. Seuss's time would have been the pretty much justified anti-Japanese who bombed Pearl Harbor sentiment, and like even the Japanese people now admit that government and the people in charge during that time were pretty awful. At least they publicly say that, if they talk about it at all. Kind of in the same way that the Germans will fully and completely and eagerly admit that the Nazi era government was not a good government. So like, it's a product of its time certainly, but it's not terrible. I also feel like some of the Dr. Seuss stories literally were kind of pro separation, segregation. I feel like some of those stories definitely did sometimes promote things you might not really want to promote by modern days. And it does make some sense that you wouldn't want to accidentally sell those books to kids and teach something to kids that the parents don't agree with. Arguably, there are parents out there that would agree with negative sentiments of anti-Japanese even now, or pro-segregation now.
I will protect my people.
Our bonds will never fray, you hear? My lord.
Like a fallen leaf.
Excuse me, I choked on some water there.
Walter, Ranger of the Forest.
But
At your service.
it highlights a lack of creativity of the Dr. Seuss holding company, publishing company, to not realize that those books could have been
Well, ain't that
retired into kind of like a Disney Vault style historic collection targeted for an older audience. Maybe they might want to add a letter that comes with the package to say, hey, this has some older, this is unedited version of this book. It's older. Mentality is not something that we actively support or endorse.
Can I go with you?
But we also don't support censorship, so we are willing to sell this this product that we has elements that we don't stand behind, in the same way that I'm sure there's plenty of publishers out there that sell books, or at least they should be selling books, that they don't inherently stand behind the narrative or the message in that. Like, I would hope that the publisher of a book like Lolita doesn't actively stand behind the idea, all the themes and things shown in Lolita, or the publisher of the book Les Miserables doesn't actively support all the negative elements in that. Like, writers these days are already terrified to do and write anything. A new story just came out the other day talking about that, where they are massively self-censoring themselves because of fear of cancel culture.
My blade is autumn. I am the fallen leaf.
Inherently, using Dr. Seuss books beyond like kindergarten is kind of pointless anyways, but I still would probably give a young kid a Dr. Seuss book and not even bat an eye or read a Dr. Seuss book. We've yet to establish any better, well-known book publishers out there. Yeah, I could have been playing anything. So good, we can just see if we can get some actual ranked wins while we're playing, because there is some argument around that. Yeah, if anything, I feel like kids probably should just read a lot, and what they're reading probably doesn't matter that much. Anything that helps them improve their reading skills is probably fine.
Time for me to prove myself.
And I doubt it's going to traumatize them or even really affect their attitude or mentality or their way of looking at the world that much. The truth is, it is your friend, that kids' friends and peers in school and their parents, whatever their parents teach your kids, or whether your kids' friends' parents teach their kids and then get passed on. Those are the things that you're going to influence more than anything. A interesting way to look at this is, probably theoretically, more than anything, the Bible has either been read to children in the United States, or children have read the Bible more than anything else. Now, arguably, a lot of Sunday school stuff that is taught to kids is the same 5 stories of like, do unto others as you'd have them do unto you, and things like that. So yeah, it's not like Sunday school for little kids is reading how to build the Jewish temple and how to make the sacrifices and how to stay kosher and things like that are in the Old Testament. Those things are not emphasized. But yeah, what has been taught, you would think the most read book would be the Bible, so that would be the thing you would think that would affect people's attitudes and actions, kids' attitudes and actions for hundreds, if not thousands of years, I guess. And it kind of doesn't. It does a little bit, probably more than you think, but it's not a major influence factor. It's more what kids see on TV, hearing music, and what their friends tell them. How teachers treat them, and what teachers tell them once they get into school. And that is only highlighted more when you get into like high school level English, and they're giving you reading assignments of these big novels like Lord of the Flies, for example, just to pick one that I remember. And I can guarantee you there was nobody that read Lord of the Flies or any of the English assignments at that level in high school and were being affected in the way they think or in the way they act at all. And any teacher who even for a second thought it would have been kidding themselves.
It's time to conquer a new domain. Waste a good metal.
Moving on, let's keep on making progress. Here we have a game called RPG Idol, which looks like nothing of interest for $1.79 English full audio allegedly. Gamma Sutra has an article. The PlayStation is getting out of the movie and TV show rental business. Okay. That's probably a good move for PlayStation. I'm not going to just automatically poo-poo every idea that the new Western PlayStation does. You could make an argument that they're taking something away without offering a new replacement, but I doubt too many people were using PlayStation 5s or PlayStation 4s to rent TV and movies. But it kind of almost implies that there is a beginning potential split between Sony and themselves as a movie and TV producer and PlayStation. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if 10 years down the line we hear that Sony Interactive Entertainment straight up just splits off of Sony, the larger corporation, and does its own thing.
How did you avoid my trap?
If anything, the only thing I think that Sony may have been useful for is, as far as movie and TVs, is particularly in Japan and other non-US locations. I bet they had a decent lineup of anime. That would be my expectation, is if you had big anime fans that wanted to stream anime and didn't want to have a Disney Plus or a Netflix or Amazon Video or a Crunchyroll subscription. We could have seen this coming potentially, because Crunchyroll, I believe a year ago, was kind of pretty much pulled from the Sony PlayStation Store too. I think maybe it's still there, but yeah, that's not really the focus. It does highlight how the PlayStation 2 started the whole PlayStation series of successes by being a very cheap, good DVD player and being considered a media player as a secondary on top of being a video game console. And now they've gone full circle, and there's seemingly no focus at all for any kind of media playback on the PlayStation 5. Which, in all fairness, I haven't grabbed a Blu-ray off a shelf in probably half a decade or more. So physical media is mostly dead. Of course, the Dr. Seuss books kind of makes that argument in the opposite. That if you really want to make sure you have a complete collection, that's another thing to certainly mention about Dr. Seuss is that I had thought about getting some Dr. Seuss books for some younger distant relatives I have, but there isn't really a good collection of the Dr. Seuss books for kids. I think Dr. Seuss wrote a few non-kid friendly books too, but there really isn't a well-priced complete collection there. So you could get a collection of the top 5 or 6 interesting books, but even that was slightly overpriced.
Now quiet, now furious.
No one gets past me.
This is our way out.
Breach of contract, huh?
So yeah, had I grabbed that at that point, I might have been happy about that, but probably wouldn't have been. Probably would have ended up paying at least $60 for a collection of Dr. Seuss books that probably would have only been read maybe once in totality. There is a bigger highlight for any kind of picture book like Dr. Seuss's, where those kind of things probably should just be on a tablet
At your service.
and not sold as separate things.
This city is my veil.
Moving on, we have a game on Steam called Frankie the Bumwalker Reborn. God, can't even read. This looks like it's a joke game. Kind of has a weird animation style that you'd almost expect to see on one of those bad Adult Swim animations shows. This is $3.19 English and Russian. Yeah, it's a joke troll game.
Is that a human?
My ally is justice.
Do we want to do this? I actually haven't watched Adult Swim probably in 3 or 4 years either.
Blameless child, let the
So I don't even know what Adult Swim does these days, other than drag their feet on their original content. People still trying to wait for the next Rick and Morty.
Oh, why'd it have to be a clear
But
day?
yeah. Hmm. 3 damage to all enemy followers,
swordplay is on you to believe. Observe.
and then
Follow my lead.
I guess hit that.
My mission is complete.
Moving on, Gamma Sutra has an article here. Nikon argues that the sinking city, quote, piracy is within its contractual rights. Steam removed the sinking city that Frogwares claimed they pirated and they had no involvement with, that was relisted on Steam. The fact that this fight happened in public highlights it just highlights an issue, certainly, of them not
You are done for.
not
Break their defenses.
keeping an eye on anything.
補修が必要みたい。
No one gets past me.
Because honestly, Valve should have flagged that game once it was taken down originally, as that there was a fight going on, and they shouldn't have allowed either company to publish that game without looking at it. They should know what their business partners are doing, particularly big business partners or even medium business partners such as Frogwares. So Nacon was given the green light to relist the game on several platforms, including Steam. I think that was by a judge, too, if I recall correctly. And so Steam is saying they're not willing to sell the game that the judge said they could list on Steam, which I don't know if
Don't underestimate me. Time for me to prove myself.
which which that definitely complicates the issue, certainly, as to who's in the right, and I think it's both parties are bad. See, the quote here is, in line with the court's decision, Nacon has repeatedly and unsuccessfully requested Frogwares make the game available on Steam, failing which it would apply a clause in the contract and wherein such a game would be adapted by a third party. The second part of this is the confusing one. Failing which it would apply a clause in the contract wherein such a case the game would be adapted by a third party. So it's saying if Frogwares failed to put it on Steam, the game would be adapted by a third party, is what I seem to understand. So Frogwares apparently did a DMCA takedown, forcing Steam to take it down. A statement made by Frogwares regarding its DMCA takedown seems to be at odds with some of the claims made by Namecom. Specifically, Namecom says the court has directed Frogwares to comply with Nacon's desire to bring the Sinking City back on Steam. Meanwhile, in Frogwares stating says, we are aware that a final ruling on whether Frogwares are obligated to deliver the game on a Steam version has not yet been made and could take years. As it stands, we have an appeals court ruling saying until further notice, Frogwares do not need to deliver a Steam version to Nacon. So basically, Frogwares says they have an appeal decision saying no, they don't have to put it on Steam. Nacon says that it doesn't mention an appeals decision. Certainly when a judge issues, an appeals judge or just a regular judge issues an order, there is often a balance of damages, and it would be hard to make an argument that Frogwares is not damaging Nacon's ability to profit or make money. The best answer here would be to list the game for sale and have the sales all put in escrow, but even doing that probably sinks any profit that Nacon could ever make and ruins their business, for better or worse, whether you want to see that happen or not. Whereas Frogwares seems not interested in making money on Sinking City because probably they're making money on other things like the Sherlock Holmes games. That does bring out an interesting search, to say the least, as far as Nacon. I see some Nacon controlling controllers and peripherals. Let's see. Vampire the Masquerade, Swan Song, Werewolf the Apocalypse, Earthbound, Rogue Book, Handball, World Rally Championship, Racing Monster Truck Championship, some Warhammer games, Some tennis games. Hunting simulators, bee simulators, fishing simulators. If this is the right Nacon that I'm looking at, Nacon Wikipedia. Doesn't want to load. Seriously? I feel like my DNS crypt server is having trouble sometimes.
All I need's an opening and you're toast.
You're done for.
Sorry, but the time for games is over.
Well, I cannot get Wikipedia to open. Well, that's weird. Let's see. So, how do you get a archived version of Wikipedia? Or a Wayback Machine version of Wikipedia? I guess you don't. See, Nacon video games. Maybe we can pull up a list. Nope, that's the same list that I had already just looked at. So the comparison to take from this more than anything is Nacon does seem to have
Just maybe this magic will help.
World Rally Championship 2, Werewolf the Apocalypse, which that game was bad, Tennis World Tour, Warhammer Chaos Bane, I imagine that game was bad too, Roguebook. All of those have been published since The Sinking City in 2019. So they do have a few other things that they're selling.
Golly, it's chilly
Maybe
here.
none of it's particularly amazing, and The Sinking City does kind of stand out as something that would have been more of a seller.
Woodland Fortress at 12 o'clock. Hey, let's play.
I think we have maybe 20 more tabs. Good. I want to end early if I can today. Let's see if this is YouTube family friendly enough.
Ooh, a baby bird's nest.
No way.
Well,
Couldn't do it
Tech Raptor has a, I guess, first impression article here. Lust from Beyond, which is the spiritual successor from Lust from Darkness, is a tame for an erotic horror game. Seems to be still very much in the same mentality of having Lovecraftian and sex mixed together, although at least in these screenshots that Tech Raptor handpicked, the scenes of ridiculous sex toys and statues and things and just naked people all around seem to be fairly reduced compared to Lust from Darkness, which really that was all that entire game was that in any one specific angle there were sex toys and other elements and naked people everywhere.
Got your message loud and clear.
Mana, come forth. My bones are
But
too
then
fast, I'll
Lust
find
from
you
Darkness really didn't have much of a
thought it was impressive.
story,
Guys, feels you like the cold?
and
You like the cold?
yeah, it was mostly just story and didn't really have any game, where I think Lust from Beyond tries to be actually more of a game.
This ends here.
but they don't give it like a real review score or anything. But that is pretty much what I'm have gotten a general impression as far as the development of Lust from Darkness, or Lust from Beyond, is it was going to be fairly unimpressive. And inherently, I think that is the problem, is that Scorn, I believe, is still in development, and it's just been in development hell for 4 to 6 years now. Agony came out, and it was a total snooze fest and played terribly. Lust from Darkness was barely a game. Lust from Beyond doesn't seem like it's much of a game. The idea of merging horror and adult-only content really does not seem to be selling very well. It seems like you are that you are really just spending too much focus and too much time on, I don't know. No way, disconnected there. You undoubtedly would have won.
That should do it.
But yeah, you're selling on a gimmick, and in all fairness, I wouldn't expect that to work in movies either. In the old days, they used to make movies like that where the gimmick was there would just be a lot of nudity and a lot of sex, and a lot of the horror movies were originally around that idea that it was an excuse to get a girl topless. They didn't go into much explicit softcore or hardcore content back then, due to probably obscenity laws. But that just never really is going to translate to video games, I don't think. Particularly if it's a game that you're trying to make at a high level of polish, because it's just kind of a niche product. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a resurgence of more pornos airing in, like, after midnight airings in AMC theaters and regular chain theaters, because they may be desperate enough at some point to have to bring in people to watch movies. Although maybe not. I think maybe the chain theaters would more likely just want to completely shut down before running porns, or at least pornographic movies. Like, up until this point, pretty much no theater that runs any kind of Disney movie would dare, or would have been, I think, even allowed to air something that was adults only, or above an R. What is the rating for movies when it's above an R? NC-17. Yeah. No NC-17 movies tend to ever get made, let alone aired on in a chain theater. And most movie theaters are chain theaters. Anyways, moving on, we have here Detective Notes Light Mystery Solitaire, Lighthouse Mystery Solitaire, which is just a solitaire game with maybe some other hidden object adventure elements, which I don't think you need to mix those two types of gameplay mechanics. I prefer just to focus on the solitaire if I'm gonna make one of these solitaire games. $5.24. If anything, it kind of highlights a weirdness, because I had pretty much assumed any solitaire game like this was made using a solitaire game only engine. So the idea that somebody would have been able to merge or change a solitaire engine into a hidden object engine is actually fairly high level for the low effort that you would assume was put into making games like this. It's kind of the equivalent to playing a first-person shooter, and then all of a sudden it sitting down and asking you to play chess, and it understands all the rules. Oh, I did mention I installed the Japanese chess shogi. I installed an app that I'd hoped would have taught me how to play shogi. It didn't have any tutorial at all. I played one game and won, and I did not understand what was going on, and I did not really understand which pieces were which. I did not understand how they were getting promoted or anything like that. But I still managed to win, which screams that it must be programmed pretty poorly. And that is, I think, a fairly pathetic idea. The first time you play a game in which you don't even understand what you're doing, you win. G4 put out yet another schedule, and they're reformatting it. Either they're having interns just constantly try and make different artwork here, or that they are just wasting a lot of resources and being really silly. At least this one is making a little bit more sense. So they're saying for Wednesday the 3rd, they'll be streaming at 2 p.m. Eastern time on Twitch, and then on Friday the 5th there'll be so yeah, that one's already even happened. They'll be streaming B4G4, B4 Attack of the Show, B4 X-Play, and the effing esports show, or the esports show, all at the exact same time. But in this version of it, apparently they're implying that it's going to all be on YouTube and Twitch, but they're not giving any of the links listed, so you don't really know where to go. This is cleaner, certainly, but it's more confusing. And then at 2 p.m. they go to Twitch and YouTube, but what does that really mean? So we are now at like the 3rd iteration of somebody doing a schedule and not being smart enough to know how to do a schedule properly. It's really ridiculous. Can we do anything here? Do that. Do that. And do that. Darn it. I got it. I should have realized that it was that dumb card. Yeah, that once again does not really inspire a lot of confidence in G4 when they can't even get a consistent schedule written that makes sense and both conveys all the information and is a smart schedule. The fact that they're streaming on Wednesdays and Fridays is a weird choice too. That screams they don't want to really compete against anything bigger happening on other days of the week. Okay.
Nothing to fear.
Next, we have a game on Steam here called Sir Love-A-Lot, which seems to be a platformer where you're trying to get to the princesses. So their hearts are broken apparently, and then he does all kinds of platformers and does all kinds of what I would normally call this like frustration platforming, but it seems like there's enough visuals here that I think I might actually be willing to put this on the follow list and give it a chance at least. It's $9.99, a bunch of languages. Yep. Seems like you have to go beat up the monsters to win the affections back of the princesses. And it seems like you have a timer counting up. There might be something there. It very possibly won't be for me, but there might be something there.
Come, my sworn brothers, rise to greater heights.
Okay.
Higher than the clouds. Pitiful.
That. Let's see, Gamatsu's Twitter feed was messed up too. So, a game called Fish Fighters has its first details, gameplay, and screenshots. It's due out the 25th with English language support, which doesn't guarantee it's coming to the West. Wouldn't mind seeing a decent fishing game, particularly on Switch. Although here we kind of have a problem immediately in that we kind of have a cleavage version of Professor Oak sending you out to go catch fish in an anime way. Yep, and maybe the controls for the Nintendo Switch will make fishing fairly feel accurate, or maybe it won't feel that accurate at all. But yeah, you're gonna have this kind of anime professor character that seemingly talk to you the whole time. And I don't see any screenshots as far as the girl character. I just see the guy character, and it's pretty low polygon. Anyways, let's see. Yeah, here we have the guy character, and then the girl character, and then another guy character. And then, is there anything else of real interesting? I imagine the other guy character is a shopkeeper. Yeah. To upgrade your equipment. I don't hate the concept, but I think for a Western version, the implementation is a little weird. And if you were going to go with heavy anime characters in a fishing game, then I don't know if that really works. In general, I think you're just going around in two different focuses at that point. There is definitely an argument that almost every fishing minigame that has been included in games has been just a mini game, and maybe that is the only experience fishing can actually be. Maybe if you try to focus around fishing, the flaws in that concept fall apart and highlight the problems of the fact that fishing is boring and expensive and complicated, let alone to get to the fact that it's gross and cruel too. Most people don't want to have to put bait on hooks or de-hook fish, let alone descale and cook fish. That's why there's such a large percentage of fishers that are just little kids that want to catch and release and throw them back in the water. And if you are properly fishing for food, you're going to be doing it with a net, if not a very complicated net system. You're not going to be using a hook and pole. And most of the time when fishing is a mini game, in something like Torchwood or Pokemon or Stardew Valley, it is usually just boiled down to a simplistic randomized waiting game or a rhythm game. It's not anything super complicated. I don't know if there are even particularly that many good I don't know if there are that many good animators that could make good animations, either flat or 2D of fish anyways. the cooking chef spin-off game, Battle Chef Brigade, that I covered, that's a game that maybe would have been better suited to have a fishing minigame element too, because the way you collected food was kind of ridiculous otherwise. Moving on, Gamma Sutra has an article. The Last of Us Part 2 breaks record for the most BAFTA Games Award nominations. Being out the 11 nods set by Control and Death standing in 2020. Although I'm not sure how often the BAFTA has had game awards. It may be only 2 or 3 years in the first place. But nominations really don't mean anything. That just means that particularly the creators of Last of Us Part 2 have been trying very hard to have their games have that game win nominations. That's been a major focus, whereas the actual general public really don't seem to have any new or renewed interest into even talking about Last of Us Part 2, let alone playing it. It's lost any relevancy it would have had. Let's see. Gematsu has another cool here. In Dreams has announced an action-adventure game called Fract for the PlayStation VR. Do we have a trailer to see what kind of game that is? You're skiing on snow down kind of like an oil refinery looking place. Yeah, it's probably a fracking oil drilling facility. And yeah, it's a cover-based VR shooter. It doesn't look terrible for a VR game in particular, but I bet you are limited to one location. Pretty much that's it. And I don't know how you're really running efficiently. Alright, well, do this.
What do you think you're doing?
And then do this.
Is that a human?
I'm gonna go ahead and evolve this to keep it alive.
I'm
Probably
done
waste.
sticking my head in the clouds.
And then in the turn. Next we have a game on Steam called Scrap
Why'd it have
Knot,
to be a clear day?
which they're tagging as a building exploration sandbox game. Yeah. It seems like it's a little bit of several things, and because of that I think I'm not probably very interested in it. It seems part Stardew Valley and part base builder and occasionally running around fighting people. Let's see. TechRaptor has this article. A multiplayer shooter, Aliens Fireteam, has been officially announced. It mostly comes out in summer, mostly. Cold Iron Studios have announced a third-person co-op shooter for set in the Aliens universe. It'll launch on current-gen platforms, which I guess means Series X and PlayStation 5, last-gen consoles, and PC this summer. Gearbox's name is nowhere to be seen, which there's no real reason why Gearbox should be involved in a new Aliens project. This really is just them, TechRaptor, throwing shade on Gearbox for having made some of the most recent, most awful Aliens games. I don't think for a second that Gearbox had the license or rights to or contract for Aliens, nor do I feel like Gearbox made an older version of a game called Fireteam. So yeah, they're, I think, being a little disingenuous there, or
What do you think you're doing? Go home. Your mom is calling you.
See, we've got some screenshots here. This might be the first co-op shooter since the Gearbox game. I think even Randy Pitchford couldn't have been that crazy to think that he was really going to ever get to work on another Aliens game, or that he even would want to. I don't think so. So I think that they're probably uninterested completely that a co-op shooter would be getting released in the Aliens franchise. I think if anything, Gearbox is probably trying to struggle how to make an IP, a new IP that they own completely themselves, so that they stop being a third-party license company for just 2K. And Gearbox has kind of stupidly bought Duke Nukem, and they own that now, so that's a name that they have, so they probably should be working on a Duke Nukem game, regardless of how ridiculous that is as a concept. Once you've invested, you're kind of pot committed. Let's see. Next, we have a Gamatsu article, Wraith the Oblivion. Afterlife launches April 22nd. This is a Oculus VR game. And yeah, that doesn't want to play. Yeah, I think my quality of service may still have some issues, but I think I'll get it too. I think I'm making progress. Although, frankly, I shouldn't be having this much trouble. Things shouldn't completely fail like they are. And it wouldn't be insane if one thing failed, but well, whatever, let's move on. Gamatsu has an article here, The Legend of Heroes Kuro no Kisekai Action Battle System First Look is now available. Although it doesn't seem like there's even a video for this one. It's just talking about which buttons do which. Which, talk about spending a lot of energy to hype. To hype up a game. See, next we have a game on Steam here called Time Storm, which lets you clone copies of yourself to get through a platformer / infinite runner. Which, yeah, I don't see enough here to make that look like an interesting game. It's $1.79, English, allegedly full audio.
How about we have some fun?
What a troublemaker!
Next, we have a game on Steam here. It's Asian Letters, TCG, trading card game. Seems to be a bunch of Chinese 3D models, if I was to guess, and the game itself looks very uninteresting. 99 cents, Chinese only, no in-app purchases even, so it's like a really, really simplistic card game. 10 equipment cards, 10 blessing cards, 78 heroes, 16 artifact cards. That's a very small number of cards for a complete deck builder style experience.
Circles and circles! No one else has to know.
Troublemaker.
Next, we have a game on Steam called Cat Gets Medieval, which seems to be probably a joke game. Doesn't look terrible though. What is the actual gameplay though? You're jumping on tables and getting health and mana and opening chests. Then explore the world. This kind of feels like it is half an attempt at an adventure game and half an attempt at just a better version of some of the previous games we've seen where you are just knocking things off the table. I mean, this probably is just a low effort asset flip game, but it actually does look like somebody put enough effort and polish here to actually make it seem like it is a RPG game you could play as a cat. $8.99, English only. I'm gonna put this on the follow list just because I would like to see if this actually succeeds.
Will be stained in blood.
That, and then that.
No one
And
else has
that
to
I
know.
should have attacked from the left, not the right. Next, we have a game on Steam called 2020 The Ride, which looks like it's just a surreal VR experience. Calling it a roller coaster. Free to play. I guess the price is right then. English only. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, feels like a VR experience where it makes you feel like you're on a roller coaster.
What a cruel end.
Next, we have a game on Steam here called Z-Race, and this doesn't look terrible as a 3D platformer, but the environments on the other side kind of look bad. Still shots actually look a lot better than moving shots. Might be something here. Early access, $14.99, but requires VR, English full audio. I'll put it on the follow list, but being a VR game, that does highlight another problem. Let's see, next we have a game called Ghostist, which looks like an RPG Maker game where you're looking for ghosts.
The quickest silver.
I don't know if I would want to play a game in 8-bit pixel graphics or even in hyper-realistic graphics where you're just wandering around looking for ghosts. Ghostbusters in general is like the one exception because Ghostbusters is a comedy that involves ghosts. It's not really around looking for ghosts or fighting ghosts that much. $4.49 English full audio. I just think I would pass on this. I'm just not interested at all in that as a concept. Can I do that and that? this,
So
and
delightful.
then this, and then evolve.
Go! Go! The bloody climax!
And then this.
You know
Then
you
do
want
that.
this.
Next, we have a game on Steam called The Clot Thickens, which looks like it's kind of just an orbital physics game, from what I can tell. I don't know what it has to do with clots because it looks like planets. Really, I guess maybe these are supposed to be germs, and you have to circle each blood cell to close it off. Yeah, I think that would be a little too complicated and boring as a gameplay mechanic. $2.99, English only. I think I'm more than willing to skip that one. Let's see. Monster Jam Steel Titans 2 is already mixed on Steam. So maybe I'll give it a little bit more time. Here we have one game where the screenshots
This isn't a game.
didn't want to load in. But that is also an older tab, so that may have been loaded before I last changed the quality of service settings. Now all the screenshots are working, but let's do this first. Deal 2. We'll do this.
Stay out of my axis reach.
See.
Check this out!
I'm gonna knock you out of this world. Nice and heavy.
Hit that, I guess. Yeah, so we have this game, Monster Jam Steel Titans 2. And the visuals look good if you wanted to play a Monster Jam game. Like, this looks like a very polished game. $26.99, that's really expensive. English, French, and Portuguese Brazil language. Well, also Japanese, Korean, and Chinese. That's a lot of full language support too. This is from THQ Nordic. It's probably a re-release of an older game. Otherwise, I think people would have mentioned that they were releasing a new game. But maybe they did just sneak one out. Right. I can do 4 to an enemy follower with this. One damage to leader and 5 to get rid of that. And then it can do that much.
Is God's word!
So unless I had something that could do 1 more damage, I think I could, or 2 more damage.
I lost. You're tough.
Still just trying to get victories here. Next, we have a game on Steam called Motor Assailant Prologue, which looks like it's an asset flip game of several space-looking things. Car combat style game, fighting floating aliens. which that idea in itself is not terrible,
Victory awaits.
but driving on an ice
Even if I
planet
scrap, I can still fight.
throughout the entire demo doesn't feel like it's varied enough. See, free to play the prologue, but the actual game is coming soon. English, Russian. I'll wait till the actual game comes out instead. This game, Maquette, is now out, and we can see it's positive. Positively reviewed. Let's see, what percentage? 80% positive for a puzzle game where you affect the way the world around you works. It's kind of hard to explain, but you can resize things, and by resizing things, it affects the world outside of you, because the world is kind of this fourth dimensional, fifth dimensional environment, and it seems like there is more enough of the game. They're calling it a recursive world. It seems like it's a decent enough game with more content than what they were originally showing out. Here we have a game called Crypto. Was it Crypto Against All Odds Tower Defense game? Which, anything with crypto in it, I wonder if that doesn't imply it actually has a crypto miner in it. Otherwise, it is just a tower defense game. $7.99 English full audio with a bunch of other language support. But yeah. Even though that has somewhat decent polish to the visuals compared to most tower defense games, it's still a tower defense game. Here we have a game called Jurisdiction, which is a strategy management game for $17.99 English, allegedly full audio. You're controlling the police department, I suppose, only in the game, where I would have thought you may have been managing the power and several other elements. Okay. Countdown 2. I think you gotta do this. And do that. Here we have a game called Trickery and Strategy, all squished together like it was one word. It's obviously just a low effort Chinese game for $9.99. English and Chinese. Nothing there impressive. Let's see. This and this. Attack. Here we have a game here called Retro Classics Too Crude. This is being listed as released in 2021, but I think this is Data East Games being published by Ziggurat or 612 Games combined. This does look like an actual game that maybe was on a Sega Game Gear or something, by the looks of it. $4.68 though are kind of hard to justify. Here we can even see there's an article here of 4 different games, and none of which I recognize, although Joe and Mac sounds somewhat familiar. So you also have Express Raider and Gate of Doom and Heavy Barrel and Joe and Mac and Super Real Darwin, Super Burger Time. If they have Super in front of the name, then they almost certainly were Super NES games from Data East. Too Crude also. Okay.
too.
My
Go ahead
blade
and
is
evolve
your
this.
salvation.
Hit that.
The things I do for fashion.
So we also have here, we're going to have several of these because they're all released at the same time. Heavy Barrel. Once again, a game I don't recognize. I do recognize Data East as a publisher for the NES, Super NES era of games. Here we have Gate of Doom. Seems to be an odd collection of characters you can play as. On one hand, yeah, these old NES games should have been re-released a long time ago. This was originally released in 1990, but selling each game individually for $4.68 is ridiculous. Not really integrating it into a bundle, so you have to buy each game individually, is fairly ridiculous too. And it's hardly like these games are recognizable. Here's Joe and Mac, and at least that screen seems to be a little bit wider. Yeah, it definitely doesn't look like there's anything. I don't really particularly recall that Data East ever made great games. If anything, they were just one of a dozen or so kind of bad game developers that existed that would kind of flood the Nintendo market. $4.68. It's really important to remember that the first generation of games before the NES came out failed because of just how many terrible low effort games got released for previous consoles like the ColecoVision and the Atari. So that is definitely a part of why it's such a issue that Steam should kind of curate what it lists, because without some effort, we could, particularly in the middle of this whole pandemic, run into a scenario where all of 2020 is overshadowed by bad games and all of 2021 is overshadowed by bad games, and at a certain point we might hit a slump. Probably not a complete collapse of the video game market, but we might hit a slump. You could also make an argument maybe the video game market in general has been just so on fire for decades that a bit of a recession is due regardless. But I think the most important thing you could do to avoid that is have quality products highlighted and not promote or talk about bad products. Here we also have Super Real Darwin, which looks like it's a pretty ugly shoot 'em up game. Same price for each game, which I'd think you would want to kind of lower the price somewhat. Next we have a game here called Watermelon Block, which just looks like a platforming game. Nothing of interest. $2.09. Apparently full audio in every language it supports, including many that don't even have interface support for those languages. Let's see what it is. Here we have Super Burger Time, which I don't know if it's even worth putting this on the fall list, but at the very least that has maybe some relevance. But Super Burger Time isn't even probably the good version of Burger Time. It's the 2-player sequel to Burger Time, which I guess that questions whether you can even play it with one player. I bet you can, but yeah, you probably can't play the first game with 2 players. Here we have Bad Dudes. I do think I recall this game. Bad Dudes versus Dragon Ninja seems to be the full title. yeah, I remember seeing this in an arcade, and I don't think it was particularly good. $4.68. Some of these games I am gonna just have to put on the wish list, but they're gonna be at the very bottom of the wish list, and I'm probably never gonna actually play them. Let's see.
Master, cleansing mode.
Here's Express Rider. I think I saw a game somewhat like this, but I don't think it was this game. I think that's probably a more polished version of the idea of being a cowboy and shooting people on the train and riding the tops of the trains. And I kind of have to be careful too, because I don't want to just hit a level where I think I need to own every single old game just for collection. This sake, like that's ridiculous, and that'd be a waste of money. There's still plenty of good games out there to play or purchase first.
All magic guns can be kind of finicky.
Let's see.
Big trouble now.
Next, we have a game on Steam called Introvert, a Teenager Simulator, which these visuals aren't detailed enough for me. They kind of dark purple on purple. Imagery here is, while mood setting, not something that I think
You just gotta
makes
listen.
sense. Plus, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of detail going on here. It's free, so I guess the price is right. English full audio. Even if this was a student project, then I don't think there's an actual game that I want to play. More than this is probably just a preachy video in the form of a video game.
New order. You watch it.
See, next we have a game called The Protagonist EX1, which is early access turn-based strategy apparently. Although this video seems to have some visuals here,
You just gotta listen.
although it seems to be wildly varied. Like, some of the visuals look good in the trailer and some of the visuals don't look quite as good. But I don't think any of that has actually what the game looks like. Seems like what you actually do is more of a turn-based attacks that you lock in, and then you see in a polished animation after the fact of your attack happening. So yeah, it feels fairly deceptive as to what it's presenting itself as. $11.69, English and French. I guess I could put it on the fall list and give it a chance, but I'm probably not impressed. Okay. Ward. And then that costs 3 play points. What does this do? Okay.
Just follow my tune, and away we go.
Okay.
Yield.
Next, we have a game called Unlock the Cat. This is a puzzle game to free a cat. Usually you see this puzzle done with trucks, and so instead you're moving pieces of wood to free a cat. That's not a terrible thought. It adds some life to what is normally a completely lifeless puzzle game, and you have a decent amount of polish around the edges, knowing that this is just going to be a one-screen puzzle game. Anyways, and the actual puzzles for something like this, if you're going to program this, you can fairly easily steal from somebody who's already done it in paper form. $1.19 English only. That price tag makes this very attractive. Okay. So this, and then put that on the field.
Company, awaken.
Do I want to evolve?
Coming at you.
Reload.
Next we have Catway Domino, which this seems to be using dominoes for like no reason. You spin the dominoes to try and get them to match, and if there's a difference you lose points based on, I assume, the number of pips, or you lose just one point if it does it wrong. So it's kind of a puzzle game using dominoes and cats for no reason, and that just seems silly, like pointless. 89 cents, English only, 7 achievements. It's probably super short of a game. Right. We have 9. So if we were to do this,
Is in my
and then this, and then this. That should work fairly well. Let's see, next we have Battle of Hunters Beast Zone, which looks like it's a beat 'em up game where you're fighting giant animals. This definitely feels like a Chinese game. You'd have to be very careful selling a game like this. I don't think animal lovers are going to particularly like the idea of beating up animals, even if they're vicious tigers trying to maul you. Just sensationalizing that is not very popular these days. This is $8.39 as an online PvP. Whole bunch of languages. Looks like it might be a Korean game more than a Chinese game. Okay. Can do that. And then I can do this and this, and then in the turn. Next we have a game called Team Fight Manager. We may have already talked about this game. Yeah, that doesn't look particularly interesting at $9.99. And then we have a game called Cavebound, which looks completely uninteresting, for $2.99 English full audio. I think we can wrap up here very quickly. Here we have a game called Puzzle Kind, which looks hideous too. And then we have Micro Annihilation. I think we had already talked about this one too. A bug strategy game, real-time strategy. English full audio for $12.74. Let's see, when I'm reloading these pages, these screenshots do immediately load, which is what I expect to see. Here we have a game called Spitting Z, which looks like it's probably a VR game with where you're shooting zombies. That's kind of a tower defense. $4.49 English only. Yeah. Somebody built a computer with Lego pieces, a 3-monitor computer setup, which, yeah, that looks cool and all. I don't know if that's really video game related. Gamatsu has an article here. Furikari 4 details heroines, which looks like a visual novel about girls on motorcycles from the look of it, traveling around. Although maybe it's not all motorcycle girls, or maybe it is. Seems like you've got your collection of anime girls that you might date or hang out with. That is one thing I feel like Danganronpa maybe would have worked a little bit better, is if you had just normal animated characters instead of wild characters. Like, there's literally a character that's a serial killer. There's a character that it looks like a gigantic overworked out muscle builder, and they're supposed to be all high school students. There's several that just look extremely wild, where if they had just been characters that had their own personality in normal clothes and normal hairstyles, it might be easier to have related to the characters as they were being murdered off one by one. For instance, in Danganronpa, there is a motorcycle gang leader, but it's a guy that has just like this ridiculously hair animation hairstyle that you would come from like a 70s era anime of a motorcycle guy, and he has fairly ridiculous clothing and appearance and fairly ridiculous language. He cusses all the time. Almost every sentence is at least one cuss word, which is kind of extreme. Whereas this girl, yeah, she's got like a look to her, but it seems realistic and believable. Of course, yeah, that's the heroines. I'm not sure if this is a 3D visual novel or if there's more to this game. It's tagged as a visual novel, so I have to assume it is. Let's see. We already talked about that. I think we already had talked about this game, Foregone. And so I think I am, at this point, just done with looking at games. It's, yeah. The remaining tabs I have were games I was going to put on the follow list last time I streamed, and I forgot to log into Steam and actually save them. So unless there's something specifically on the front page of Steam that I wanted to see, which I'm not sure there is. Let's see. Some of this is still loading in. Let's see, Bomber Crew, Space Crew. I did finally buy Bomber Crew, but it's probably been 2 years since somebody asked me to cover it, so yeah, I will get around to it eventually, but I dropped the ball as far as playing that in any relevant amount of time. And I don't think I own Space Crew. Alba Wildlife Adventure on sale to $12.74. But yeah, there's no big sale or anything happening on Steam. I feel like there probably was a news announcement. So what if I was to turn off the ad blocking stuff and look at the latest news on the blog. Steam official blog. Top releases of January 2021. Let's see. We probably have already talked about January. There should have been a top releases of February that came out, but apparently they haven't released that yet. Well, it took them all the way up till February 25th to release the January one, so it must be backwards. Right. So what is this? Let's go ahead and turn the ad blocking back on and see if that works. Just clean that up a little bit. So the top 20 releases randomly sorted was Not My Backyard Rails, a Chinese game, Curious Expedition 2, which I guess I'll put that on the fall list, Yakuza 4 Remastered, Mad Games Tycoon, Yakuza 5 Remastered, Utaro Mono Prelude to the Fallen, which Home Behind 2, which I hadn't heard about, Skull, Yakuza 3 Remastered. Guess if you want to play Yakuza games, now is a great time. Journey to a Savage Planet, Dyson Sphere Program, which I just don't think I'd ever want to play that. Atelier Ryza 2, which is still very popular. Everspace 2. I'm not going to go through all of these. Ender Lilies, which is overwhelmingly popular. This is kind of a great point to bring up some games that maybe were on the fall list and just make sure that they're either promotable to the wish list or make sure they're on the wish list. Here we have a horror game called Devour, Burner Together. That's very popular, but that doesn't look like anything I'd want to play. King Arthur's Knight's Tale. I want to check that out. It's not loading any screenshots or anything. So weird. Heroes of Three Kingdoms 8. Medium is very popular. Interesting. Snowtopia. And then the top 3 releases was Hexseed, which I want to see if that is based on Hex cells. Cosmic Break Universal. SCP Together. These would all be free games, so I'll probably never cover them. B100X Auto Dungeon RPG. And Soul Doser. Interesting here for January, not a single visual novel or adult game being listed. I don't think Utaro Ramono is actually an adult game. Like, sure, Yakuza are games that are mature games. That's not what I mean. I mean, there's no sex games seemingly listed here, and no visual novels seemingly here. Whereas I feel like December of 2020 did have something. Like Haven has, I think, sex in it, but I wouldn't call it a sex game. Yeah, maybe Valve is backtracking and they're not highlighting the adult games anymore, because I'm not seeing anything listed specifically for yeah, they're pulling some shenanigans here, because look at the actual blog post here in December. What is not being highlighted more than anything was the adult game Dick, Dine, and Dash, which was the Dick Girl adult game. So yeah, that's been defocused on. Whereas this polished version of it is the top 20 releases. Not showing that. Now, in all fairness, it probably isn't the case there, because this is still in the background and I'm not logged in, so I'm not opted in to see the adult content. So yeah, I bet what happened here is we looked at the list here while not logged in, whereas if I was logged in, I bet there would be an adult thing, which that seems, I guess, fine, but a little weird that there should be something on the page, maybe at the very bottom, that says you're not logged in, therefore you're not seeing adult content. Because yeah, you definitely they're definitely hiding something here. But there is nothing down here at the bottom that says we're hiding adult content from you. There's nothing at the top that's saying we're hiding content from you. The only thing that's even indicating you're not logged in is this login button. So yeah, that seems like that's a little excessive, hiding the games and censoring through that aspect. Anyways, that would, I guess, bring me to the Humble Bundle store, so we'll see if there's any new bundles. Nope. No new game bundles. The 2 bundles that were going to expire have expired. And since the game bundles are now depicted as their own shelf, I don't even have to really scroll down to see if there are any new new game bundles, or look at the other kind of bundles. See, Pure Tetris final update adds 4 playable characters, spectator mode, and more on March 4th. So I'll just mention that. Let's see. Apparently Diablo 2 will have Diablo 2 Resurrected will have 2 alphas before launch. They literally are taking the idea of alphas, which means before you even run like an alpha program is before you've even finished adding like the concept of code and new functions, where a beta is the idea that you've locked down the concepts and you won't be adding any new features, and it will just be bug fixes at that point. I think that's the case. It's been a long time since I've had the rant about how video games mislabel games as betas and alphas. But the idea of having 2 alphas is just completely insane. It definitely feels like you're setting off, Activision Blizzard is setting off on the wrong foot. Let's see. Guilty Gear Strive has been delayed to June 11th, according to Gametsu. Bloomberg says Nintendo is going to announce a new Switch model with 7-inch OLED display later in 2021. Which, yeah, just a new OLED display is probably a little less than what you'd want. We'll talk about that game on Friday. We'll talk about that game on Friday. Hocus 2 is on Steam. Hocus 2 I would have thought would have been on Steam a long time ago. Maybe it got delisted and relisted. Game Raiden 4 X Mikado Remix is coming to the West. We'll talk about that on Friday. We've been streaming for 2 hours and 50 minutes. That last hour and 50 minutes went by fairly fast. But yeah, because of the fact that my Twitter feed is still a mess, there isn't a lot of new tweets. Okay, well, and that puts us in a good position. We didn't get as many victories as we would like, but we're still fine. Alright, well, that's going to be it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and get me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.